thank you to Pastor Carlin and the elders for allowing me to share for a few minutes this morning. And I will keep this brief as it's intended to be a short version of my testimony, and a thank you to you. So to begin, I and my wife Kristen have been members here at Covenant since September of 2012. I've had the opportunity to share my testimony to my frontline group at one of the men's breakfasts and at one of the Angel Tree parties a few years ago. Last year, I started helping coordinate the Angel Tree program alongside Carlton and Judy Stringer, which has been an honor for me. But my passion for the Angel Tree program extends long before my volunteering here at Covenant, and it ties directly into my testimony. So for those who haven't heard my testimony and don't know me, as Pastor Carlin said, my name is Doug Shaffer, and my testimony goes back more than 30 years to my childhood. My high school transcripts labeled me as a troubled youth. At 18, at the second semester of my senior year, I dropped out of school to get married and help raise my then wife's little girl. Within 2 months of our marriage, I was in an automobile accident which resulted in the stillbirth of our only son. We separated and ultimately divorced, and I became a drunk and a drug addict. Within a year, at the age of 19, I was convicted of several felonies and sentenced to prison. After only 7 months, I was paroled, and within 2 months, I was back in jail. This time, I was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 60 years in prison. In prison, I couldn't stay out of trouble, and I didn't care. As far as I was concerned, I was going to die in prison. I'd never see freedom again. But in August of 1992, sitting in a solitary confinement cell, because of the pursuing nature of God, I finally surrendered my life to God. I confessed and accepted Jesus. And to me, my life was worthless, but I told God if he could do anything with it, he could have it. And for the next 19 years of my 21 years of incarceration, I tried to live a life surrendered to God. He used me in the lives of more men than I can count. I was sponsored by Putnam City Baptist Church for more than 15 years and thousands of dollars in discipleship materials, discipling other men in prison. I was able to set up 3 full scholarship programs at 3 Bible colleges for men to pursue in prison. I was even able to write and implement a peer-to-peer training program for inmates to teach other inmates how to disciple each other. Personally, I was able to finally obtain my GED and several Bible college and seminary degrees, culminating in my first master's degree in 2005. So there's much I could share about God's work in my life, but there's one thing that's always been a continuing passion for me, and that's the Angel Tree program. As early as 1993, as I worked in various chaplains' offices, I was able to see firsthand what this program means to incarcerated fathers. These men whose selfish and thoughtless sins place their children in the care of others. Many were with wives or ex-wives and girlfriends, grandparents. A lot were even separated from family altogether. And these men who, on average, make less than $15 per month in prison wages couldn't provide for the necessities of their children, much less luxury gifts. But every year they knew at least once they could provide nice, decent gifts to their families, to their children, through the Angel Tree program, a program that you make possible. Then in 2010, I was granted parole, and I was released in 2011. Just before Thanksgiving that same year, I found myself without a job and unable to secure one. If being a convicted murderer wasn't hard enough, I had an ankle monitor, had to complete 300 hours of community service, pay monthly fees and fines, and adhere to a very strict curfew. I was getting desperate, and I was afraid of failing my wife, Kristen, and her niece that she was raising. The day before Thanksgiving, I found myself at the Yukon Prayer Garden, kneeling at a bench, crying out to God in desperation. I couldn't even provide my family a Thanksgiving dinner. As I was leaving that prayer garden, a man that I had met at Life Church called me and said, "Doug, my wife and I were talking. We'd really love for you and your family to come share Thanksgiving with us." He apologized for the short notice, and I can't even remember what his excuse was. But what I do remember is that within minutes of me crying out to God, he revealed to me once again that he is in complete control of my life. I was again humbled by his grace and love. And a few months later, this same man asked me to come and speak to the president of his firm in the recruiting industry about a position. I worked in that role for almost 2 years until September of 2014. In July of 2014, Pastor Carlin introduced me to Howard Betts as a candidate to manage and grow his dumpster business. I didn't know anything about the waste industry, but because we professed to share a set of core values and beliefs rooted in the gospel of Jesus, I made the decision to keep following where I thought God was leading. And I accepted the offer of Howard and his brother. I addressed my background with him and his brother, and in Howard's words, "If God has redeemed you, who are we to say otherwise?" Because they were willing to give me a chance, and through a refusal to compromise our shared professed Christian beliefs in our business practices, Howard's company grew significantly to where it was recently acquired. Also, since my release, I have continued my secular education, starting with my associate degree at Rose State College. Now at the age of almost 50, this once drunk, drug-addicted, high school dropout convicted felon is now in his 5th semester towards his doctorate degree. Sometimes my past seems a lifetime ago, and sometimes it stands as an accuser. And when it does, every time it does, God reminds me of who he is and what he has done. To quote a song, he reminds me just how far the east is from the west, from one scarred hand to the other. For most of the time since my release, I've been a part of this congregation with my wife and daughter. We have participated with you guys every year alongside you in the Angel Tree program and several other ministries, but especially the Angel Tree program. And none of who I am today would be possible but for the grace and redemption of God. He took this worthless and guilty man and redeemed me. He made me a father and a husband and so many other things that I could never have been in light of my past. We found Covenant online, looking at its tenets of faith. We decided to visit. We stayed because of the people that we have forged relationships with, people who clearly love God. Covenant says, know God, love others, and live the gospel. When you participate in the ministries of this church, especially the Angel Tree program, you are fulfilling this mission. And I just wanted to take a moment and share a fraction of God's work in my life, revealing from my experience on the other side of the barbed wire fence why the Angel Tree is a passion for me. Thank you for being the hands and feet of Jesus in all the ministries of the church, especially the Angel Tree program.